Good afternoon, Prasoon, and a warm welcome to you on behalf of APAC News Network. APAC, we are a media organization headquartered out of Noida, and we focus across government, healthcare, education, enterprise IT, as well as BFSI. So,
Hmm.
primarily, today's conversation, what we are trying to gauge is as one of the premier LMS players in the country, we would like to talk about your solutions and services and the domains that you are working with. And in the current situation, looking at the roadmap, how does the solutions from Stradlin fits in there? So the best way to start probably would be if you can give us an update on the solutions and services that are currently in the Stratman's portfolio.
Yeah, sure. So thanks a lot. To so basically to get started, I'll give a very quick overview of what we do. So essentially, we are a full spectrum company as we see ourselves. Full spectrum means that, especially in education, uh, it so happens that we are doing all the parts that are existing, and we are probably the only company in India that is doing it currently. Now, what does this full spectrum compose of? So essentially, we are into creating products which help you do your learning management. In a large corporate, we provide software products which allow them to disseminate their learning, control their learning, put a complete enterprise layer on top of it. And in the similar line, we have these newer variants of this product where the learning uh, shifts from being just given to you, it becomes a performance support system, which means that uh, you, rather than just taking content, it kind of drives your education. It tells you, okay, no, your skill is this, so you better do that. So one side of the thing is around software product, around learning and enablement, uh, sales enablement part. So imagine you have to uh, so learning is now going beyond just giving you knowledge. It is becoming now a partner where, imagine you're a sales team member, can this system help you really go convert your next deal? So the direction is that now, and we are pretty ahead in that game in terms of creating such tools. So that's first part. The second part is that we are into the services business, wherein we do the entire e-learning development for people. Ranging from very basic e-learnings to this whole amazing multimedia driven stuff. So this whole there's a big large team we have in terms of creating such empowering content. And the third part which completes our spectrum is this whole deal about authoring. So we represent one of the biggest authoring tools of the world, Articulate. We represent them in India. So essentially, in summary, these are the spaces for us to operate on. These are the places we are at. Yes.
Okay, thank you. So let's take one by one. First, we'll take the first phase that you said. One thing here, many of the knowledge and basically these performance matrices that also you talked about will depend on the specific vertical because there's a lot of domain knowledge, domain specific knowledge which is required. So that means a lot of customization in terms of the content, the learning content.
Hmm.
So my question is specifically, are there which are these domains where the customization and the specifications that you excel in, and what are the sort of use cases in those specific domains?
Hmm. So the interesting thing about the edtech industry is that it's mostly domain agnostic, which means that the basic elements that go in are same. Even if you change the vertical, maybe the knobs that you just need to move the knob. For example, there are certain clients which may require more multimedia to be thrown at people. There may be clients which are saying, no, 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 no multimedia. And I'll give you some examples. For example, there is a large BPO organization, right? And there are youngsters working there. And if you gauge the personas of those people, they require more of a fun content, because their attention span will be low. They are young folks, so they don't want very difficult material. So that's probably one side of the story. The other side is that we have worked with companies which are into legal domain. And interesting as it is that we gave them something which was fair, very interactive, not very interactive, let's say interactive, and they said, "Okay, remove everything, we don't want interactive, only please put the bullet points." So one differentiation is in the type of content that people expect. If this younger crowd more of game based training and stuff like that, one dimension is that. And that doesn't depend too much on the industry, it has some bearing, but it depends on the age group of the people that you want to train and the demographics. Are they like people who are very closely linked with education, or are these young folks with, I would say, a certain amount of education only? So that is first dimension that we have to play on. Now let's talk about the business dimension. Let's say there are different segments of industry. There is a BFSI segment, there are this and that. Now see, every segment, BFSI or semiconductor company, or say a BPO, or say a healthcare company, they all are same in terms of their need to be, they all need to impart knowledge to their people. So that's where everything connects. This is actually the same picture. But where you have contrast is that the subject matter varies. And the good thing about our industry is that nowhere we claim to be like a person. If we start with the thesis that we have to know all the domains, then we can never be anything, because there's so many domains. There is healthcare. So the basic device that we have at our disposal is that we use the SME of that company, the subject matter expert. So if I'm going to a semiconductor company, it's not that we're going to be learning semiconductors. We will be picking up the people who are training over there, or senior folks who have knowledge matter, and our job is to just convert their story into a more palatable form. So there again, segment wise, it doesn't matter as long as we have the skill, which is known as instruction design, then we can even handle that part. uh, Third thing that I'll mention is that there is a security concern. So generally, you have BFSI clients who really make us fill, all those 30 pages of compliance, and you are done with 30, another 30 pages will come. So they're very security and audit centric. So in that case, the only thing that differs is that they want to know that whether we have all the compliances or not, or they're sometimes they're very industry specific. So healthcare probably is the most notorious there. They have, you know, every time I meet, some request from healthcare, you get to know some terminology. Okay, some name. Okay, do you have this compliance? We kind of try and see, whether we have it or we do want to get that compliance. So essentially, across the segments, these things vary. But good news is that the method and the recipe is same. You know. So yeah, I'll probably say this, and maybe Sika, if it is, if I've answered it amply, great. Otherwise, please help me with another sharper question on this if you want me to answer.
No, no, sure. This definitely helps. One part I would like to extend beyond this is one. Say you, I am understood the way you are bringing the subject matter expert. That is for the domain specific knowledge. But for some of the training methodologies, as you explained, which is done demographic wise, that is also clearly. Now, in terms of the technology wise, say in certain cases, you are using technologies like gamification and those things. So, one, in terms of this technology, leveraging technologies like gamification, or in some cases, even augmented reality or virtual reality kind of technologies, there needs to be a certain level of standardization. As you mentioned, since you are technology agnostic, so one, how do you derive at that standardization? That is one part. And the second part of the question is a more important one. If we look at the last 1.5 years during the pandemic, especially, since most of the workforce have been initially fully virtual, and even now maybe a bit hybrid kind of, but it's more or less largely a virtual workforce. So their training methodologies, while even pre-pandemic we might have been using virtual trainings, but the trainings used to be physical, most of the sessions.
Yeah.
So now, how has the fundamental paradigm of the training imparted changed in the last 1.5 years?
All right. So let me take this part of the question. I think essentially there are two parts to your question. One is that about the, let's say, whatever has happened post COVID. How have things changed? What has got reinforced? What has got corrected? What has been pushed back? And the second part, which I'll address, is about, you talked about very interesting technologies like AR, VR, and gamification. How do we find when to use what, and how do we standardize those things? So we'll take the first part. Very clearly, COVID will go in some time. We all hope, but the impact, the dent on the universe that it has created, will stay. And if we were to model this thing, everybody knows, but what it has done is that it has made people more acceptable. In fact, enterprises more acceptable to that key. Not only within the holy walls of their company work can done, they were kind of, they could break that inertia, and now they know that people can learn work with, of course, some ups and downs, from the comforts of home. So now one thing is that there is a huge acceptance now, especially in the enterprise space, where they were, I remember that they used to treat their content as some kind of a gold that they hold. It may be a plain sand, but sometimes there's a endearment, a lot of, so that thing is relaxed. I remember, one of the client asking me, okay, Prasoon, now this is our content. It was a company, let's say, in shipping space. And they said, okay, now what will happen if my content is there? How are you ensuring that nobody is copying it? And then we told them, okay, there are some provisions which we can do. Maybe we can block somebody from taking a snapshot and stuff like that. But then the person kept on insisting, such that we finally told them, if you're a very motivated person, he can always have a camera and take photographs. So no technology can actually stop you, but there are deterrents. So people have become more acceptable. So point number one is, after COVID, enterprises have become more acceptable. They are little more real about. They are not so much just sticking with, oh security. They are actually being real about it. Okay, yeah, as long as people are getting trained, it's good for them. And where are they getting trained? They should not worry too much. Uh, Second part in this is that, one the first part, the summary, is that there's an acceptance now, forced acceptance, especially for large organization, because startups anyway had this model of people learning from wherever they are. And so that was the first thing that happened due to COVID. Second, which has been very lucky to us, is that I remember this very interesting anecdote, that about 2 years back we had this alumni meet of my college, and I was meeting some of the bright folks in our team, in our batch. And one guy was an investor, and I told him that um, we're an edtech company, and he made a fun comment. He said that edtech is gloomy, and we all started laughing. Of course, I did not laugh too much, but that used to be the notion 2 years back, 3 years back. And after COVID, suddenly this gloomy underdog industry started taking the main stage. So one phenomena that we have seen is that in HR tech and ed tech, suddenly we are no more underdogs. And that means there is an opportunity for all companies like us and our competitors to really, the center stage is ours. So a lot of things in content market will change. If you see, currently the focus mostly is around content and how you can deliver well. There are teachers who are imparting that content, but it is getting saturated. So if you were to talk about, if I can talk about the trend part, then you see, there's a lot of content already there. Even if you go to YouTube, you may find these awesome set of folks who have this very good gift of explaining things, and they can put to shame somebody who may be sitting on, maybe a professional trainer. So the interesting phenomena is that content is no more a blockage. So everybody, the world is flat when it comes to content now. Now the bigger thing we have to solve is that amidst all the content that lies, how do you, solve the next problem? The next problem is of attention. So if I were to tell you, the gamification or any such media such technology are coming, because there's a basic human behavioral dynamics that if you have more of something, then it becomes even more difficult to do that. I mean, let's see. I mean, we all have been in the Doordarshan era age, right? Where even a single program, how boring it maybe, was a blessing from the universe, and we used to watch all of it, and we used to crave, ki, oh my god, will there be someday where we have very nice content at our disposal? Second thing is, in 1980s, I remember when I was a small kid, there used to be this kind of a saying that people who have access to Encyclopedia Britannica, so the schools which had Encyclopedia Britannica, those kids are like lucky, because they will know so much about the world, and probably they will do better just because they have an awesome support system like that. But we used to live that with that excuse in that era. But look at today, everybody has access to, the most. I mean, the content is no more a secret. Everybody has access to it. Now the next problem comes, the shifting bottleneck. Now the current problem is that, okay, you have so much of content, abundance of content. Now how do you really put your mind on it? How do you know what to start, what to end? So those are some of the challenges that currently we all have. The awesome content. If you go to let's take some examples. So if you're a young learner, small kid, you have all these white hat juniors, you go and learn all the music, maths, or coding that they offer. Now look at the chain. So when you're in that age group, you are covered. There are companies which taking care of your needs there of content. Then as you grow up, you get into this competitive exam era, all the 12th board, there are so many companies which provide you content. you know COVID or no COVID, these phenomena were there. Okay, now the only thing is that because of COVID, all the platforms have become, they're claiming, okay, no, you can go to your own home, you don't have to step out, we'll give it at your home. So I think that is one of the shift. So competitive exams, so if you look at it, Byju's and other things, they are addressing that space. And then go one level up, you now got selected into your engineering school. Then the next bottleneck comes, which is, how do I get a better job? I am from a certain branch. How do I get into data science? And then you have things like Edureka. So from a learner point of view, you are well addressed. You are overfed. You're gonna be really, when you're overfed, you wanna be fat. You may be, because you may not be able to manage your content. So that is the challenge, and that is where the next line of innovations will happen in the tech industry, because it is totally getting saturated now. Everybody is only claiming, okay, my content is better, I deliver it better. But don't you think there's an upper limit to it? So basically, in summary, what COVID had done is that it has brought back to your home, that everybody is ready to deliver at your home, the learning or anything. And the second part is that, which is not related with COVID, but a phenomena, that things are getting saturated now. So there will be newer things that will come in, which I'll talk about as we go further, which will solve it. But let me address the second question. So things like AR, VR, and gamification are, in very real sense, drugs only. They're like medicines and drugs. So when you have attention, your attention has to be pulled to something, then gamification comes in. So the way to look at gamification is that when there is some content which is demanding attention and people may not give attention. For example, let's say compliance training are generally seen as boring by across the class of people. So many times we get request of putting in little gamification. Why? Because gamification is seen as a medicine, where you want to extract attention. So you gamify so that people are drawn into that kid-like behavior, that they want to compete, they want to earn 100 points, they want to then take that point and redeem whatever they want to ace it and then get an Apple Watch. So there is a little bit of behavioral dynamics. It's like a medicine. Why? Because people are over flooded, oversaturated with so many things, and there's a attention disorder of a mass scale. Everybody is having options. Should I see this or maybe finish a reel on YouTube? So gamification, we see it like that. Like a doctor, we know here. Now, if your content is interesting and the audience is already motivated, then giving gamification is an overkill. So that's how we look at gamification. Now, the next thing is AR and VR. Now, AR and VR, for whatever strange reason, have a very small silo in which they work, because generally they are geographical, or it's more of a rendering of a 3D space. Not many problems map into it so directly. So it is not a very broad based offering. So generally company which are in medical science, for example, you are teaching somebody how to accurately move your hand and do a virtual operation, those kind of areas have its place. Or if you have these uh, tactile kind of a thing, there are kids who have to assemble things together in 3D space and learn from that. um, Not tactile, but I mean aggregating something in 3D space. So the space there is limited. It is not a broad range solution. It is a very very specific um, situations. Manufacturing organizations, sometimes they want to train people on how to drive those, where there's a little risk. You have these trolleys which are automatically operated, but before giving them, they can learn those physics on these AR VR devices. So in summary, AR and VR, I find them to be very awesome. If you plot a graph, you give somebody AR and VR experience, they will just hook onto it for, let's say, 1 hour, 2 days, and then suddenly there's a steep fall. That is what I've seen. There is something awesome about it, but it falls on very fast. So yes, in certain domain, very needed, very much needed, but broadly, I don't see um, a broad acceptance. All use cases would map to that. And in terms of standardization of that, basically we as an expert come in, we try to map who is your audience. Because many times client come and they want to give, just like parents, they want to give the best. So they will say, okay, can you have gamified learning with, let's say, this and that built in? And that is where we come in as doctors, so to say. And we say, no, 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 you don't have to over medicate your people. Who are your people? If they're serious folks, motivated folks, just go with little less exciting content, because they are just, every time when you are learning, you don't want dance and drama, right? I mean, we all have studied, sometimes we want an action, but sometimes we want to be seriously focusing. So that is what we do really, in terms of standardizing and predicting.
So here, one of my question earlier, you mentioned about these changes. So what are some of these new innovations that you talked about? So if you can elaborate on some of these new innovations. And the secondary part of that question is, how has in this pandemic situation, see, typically earlier, most of the content that you are saying, you would be dealing in the enterprises, either with the HR heads or specifically many large enterprises have L&D people. But now, the how has the conversations changed in this post-pandemic and virtual working situation? Conversations with HR or L&D people, how has these conversations changed?
Hmm. So again, there are two parts to the question. First part is about the kind of innovation that we are going to see in near future, things that are going to come near future and in a broader future. That's one part I'll talk about. And the second question is about how's the dynamics changed in terms of enterprise talking to us. What were they talking before? Who were talking to us before? And now who is talking to us? And how has the conversation changed as a function of COVID? So so I think it's like a car that was anyway running at, let's say, 60 km per hour. You know, and when COVID came in, it was just like some truck hit that car, and the car is safe, but it got a little higher acceleration. And the effect of that would be that temporarily there will be a high speed demand. For example, everybody's caged today in home. So the time this COVID thing happened, um, I'll tell you a very interesting thing that happened. So when the COVID struck and everybody was packed in home, I called up my server team, cloud server, because you understand, cloud is one place which is awesome, but it's also where a lot of money for organizations like us get burnt. You know, so immediately we had a meeting and we decided that since everybody is going to be home, so why don't we, without compromising on the quality, pull down the strength of our servers, and so that we save some cost here, because people will be a little hibernated in their home, maybe doing their work. And we did that part a little bit, and then suddenly next day I get a call from my team, says, you know what, You asked us to reduce, it looks like you will have to increase. So I was like, what really happened? So of course, people were at home, and suddenly the organization was in flux. So there is no easy way immediately to make them very productive from the work point of view. So they immediately said, okay, since you don't have anything else to do, why don't you all go and finish your all pending training? So a short-term effect that we saw of this phenomena was that suddenly there was a lot of action on our production system. Many people started doing it. We have spikes and everything. So yes, we scaled up things, and good and bad. Good part was that suddenly they started using more actively. So a lot of training happening. You become a very important, more active piece now. And then time flew by, and the downsides are not much. I mean, of course, you have to scale up, so there's a cost implication, but there's always brings smiles to us if people are using your software, right? So it is a good sign in total. Now what happened was that this was the initial few months, but then learning is never that interesting. Even Netflix is not that interesting. For all of you who have Netflix, you'll know you'll just open it, scroll, and then go to sleep without watching. So when it can happen to Netflix, it happens to education. So learning is always an uphill task. So even the trend then was that after 3 4 months we saw that things again dampening back, because we are humans, we adapt fast to whatever environment it is. So we saw that the activities started coming getting back to the normal. So it was an interesting phenomena. But we started getting urgency calls now. So clients would call up and say, and this is, I'm assuming, true for all the company in this space, and not just us, any company which requires people to be communicating remotely. And that is where Zoom became a $1 billion company. I mean, it was the best time for them, this whole COVID period. Zoom was de facto standard for many companies to be operating their communication on. And one kind of communication is learning. So there were many companies who started reaching out to us and saying, we immediately need LMSs, we need LXPs, we need sales enablement. And it was good for us. And the whole phenomena of suddenly after 3 months people realizing, oh, this is gonna be like this. Okay, for the time being we had made people to learn. Now time is back for us to make them work. So we immediately required them to be having systems. So the companies which were not having a very strong plan on getting LMSs or such education system, they were kind of beelining and asking us for a quick deployment of LMSs and stuff. So that was the phenomena that we saw as an individual company. But I'm sure this is the same trend that all the edtech players would have seen in their own shades. And then the conversation has so in that period it was an emergency situation. People were really needing our support, clients and of all variety, coming and saying, yeah, give us something so that at least there is some learning happening. And otherwise, can you quickly make a program? We're not too much worried about the jazz you bring in, just get us these 3 modules quickly to us. So those kind of phenomena started happening. Good for us, it worked out well. And broadly what happened is that people became more accepting. Otherwise they were like, no, these guys should not do. So we had this mobile application which allowed people to in offline, just like Netflix. You can always download your movies, turn off the internet and consume them. So we were some of the early players. And when we started this company, we knew with this feature may give us an extra edge. So we had that feature, so that helped a lot. Because the easiest way is you cannot let people just go and buy a computer which is safe enough, but everybody has a decent mobile phone. So that product suddenly became, maybe the time had come for it. So the mobility based solution, in summary, we found was very useful in terms of the communication that is changing is not just because of COVID. There was a change in communication already. So typically in LMS, you would talk to an L&D person. If the company is big, there will be an L&D department. If the company is small, then it would be somebody at a SVP or a CXO level who will talk to us. Now, what we saw as a general change, not related with COVID, was that learning is no more seen as just do you, just like CD player. Earlier it was like a CD player. So you have buy these content, you are a CD player, LMS is CD player, you put it in and you consume it. How you consume it, what you consume it is not your concern. So you are just a CD player provider. Now what changed is that people now not using it just for learning, they're using for performance support. And that's a shift in the pendulum, because learning is only about, okay, I provide this software system, people can come, you whatever you load they will see, and I'm doing my job is done. But the performance support paradigm came in for the last, I would say, 2.5 to 3 years. There's a spike that I've seen where they're saying, ki, forget learning. I cannot make my people learn for too long. I have smaller windows. What can you do? Let's say they can, rather than having a large learning window, can they learn for some time and then can the system give them some support? So imagine, let me give you a scenario. Ki rather than making this guy sit for 3 months in a training of classroom, digital, this and that, can they used to say, Ki Prasoon, can it be shifted to, let's just say, 1 month of training? And whatever 2 months of deficit is there, can your system provide something so that they can take clues, just like Google? You just go and you take a clue and you do your job. You so rather than increasing your IQ, it increases your effectiveness. What Google does to us is that it doesn't make us smarter, does it? I mean, does it increase our IQ? No, but it just makes us more effective. So we started. So the change that started happening is now LMS is no more just a CD player of content. It is also like a Google to you. Okay, so if you have content, that content is analyzed by the LMS, and if you search for certain thing, it can give you an answer. Okay, you know what? You are searching for, the imagine a credit card company, and they have, let's say, a card. Let's call it Suvidha card, whatever. So the typical LMS model is ki you will have some course on various card, maybe Suvidha card courses also there. So if you have to really learn about it, you have to find that course and do it again. So the shift was that rather than this happening, imagine a interface where somebody can just punch in the problem they're facing. Okay, I want to know what is the annual fees for Suvidha card. Can the system, given it has all the database of content, find out and bring him closer to the content? So imagine a system can say, okay, fine, this particular content, page number 27, has this information. So rather than you spending your time finding the content, it takes you there, just like what Google does you. It doesn't give you the content, it gives you reference to an existing content. Okay, on the internet, look at this. So this is the shift that happened, and because of that, not just L&D heads, the sales enablement folks would come to us and say, okay, now how can using this technology improve our sales? Can this tool be used not just as a back office tool of learning? Can this be on a mobile phone? And as my agent is talking to the customer, can he get some answers and show to the client also, so that my sales is enabled, more credibility is built in. So the different, what we saw, that not just L&D, but other front facing fleet driven organization, they became very effective, and they saw that there's a direct connection between their sale and if these systems can help them a lot. There was a very big change, I must say, that we have witnessed. So yeah, that's for
So
that.
very interesting. So you have explained the sort of both the operating model and business model of your solutions and services business. So now, how does this translate? What is the change in your go-to market approach? Since, as you were mentioning earlier, it was primarily the HR or L&D person. Now, as you mentioned, it can be a sales enablement. So, how has your GTM changed accordingly? Maybe the third business, which is more a reselling kind of business, that will have a traditional mode, but at least for the main two businesses, the solutions and services, what's your GTM now?
So so see, broadly we have been sales driven, you know, for no specific reason. That's probably our evolution. We were more sales centric. We have these calling teams, we have these very well trained, very senior seasoned professional in sales. We're a sales heavy organization in that sense, and they do their regular job of getting a lead and stuff like that. We have I would say, a fair presence in the marketing channel in terms of how we are currently. So most of the things, and then we do road shows and all that thing. So if you ask, our strategy is that the segment is that wherever there is a you know anything which is related with HR, that is a place where we put our focus and think it can be represented there. That's one kind of thing. So we all of us CXOs, we are pretty active there for that reason, on various forums which are around HR. All the ETHRs of the world, we sponsor them, we are there in terms of our strategy. And in terms of reaching out, now we are more open panel, in the sense that not just HR, but sales teams or any teams which have to do selling. So there are a lot of companies which are healthcare companies, which are into which have MRs. so they become our segment, and we use our sales and marketing channels to reach out to them. So essentially that's how we do it, and since it is an agnostic platform, we sometimes are surprised. So if we are present enough, and by grace of god now our brand is now known in a much higher fashion. So different type of companies keep coming to us, so interesting mix of company. There is a recently a military driven organization that came to us. There is, so we just have to put our fishnet out there, and we have to be present in all the HR events which are of significance, and enablement related events. So that's how we typically approach the market.
And what sort of, since again you explained the profile of the companies or clients that you're working with, any of the marquee client names that can be shared, and very briefly, what sort of use cases you have with them?
So, so basically, our elimination criteria, so to say, is we only work with large known brands, or like sufficiently funded companies. So most of the clients that we would have worked on will be a known company to you. Now, if you allow me, maybe I can pass on that information, because I may not be the best person to tell it over my right from my head. But probably I can provide that information if you allow me, as a supplement to our discussion. But to satisfy your query, I mean, of course, our the large players in the insurance space, many of them in the BFSI segment are our clients or have been our clients of one or different things. So, with a, so I may not be very accurate in terms of the number on top of my head, because I am a technology guy, uh, and I have not updated myself. But the last where we heard was that we were close to 200 clients here and there across all of our businesses. So all of them are mostly the brands that you would know of.
So, in conclusion, what I would like to ask is, if we look at for the next 2 to 3 quarters, and keeping in mind, as you mentioned, this COVID thing is likely to end, and but still we are likely to have a hybrid work situation. So, keeping in that in mind, what would be your key focus areas, both technology wise as well as business wise?
So if you keep a window of 2 3 quarters, then you can look at some evolutions. You can't look at revolutions. Revolutions would be at a range of about 2.5 years from now. But let me first address the question you had, and maybe then also dwell a little bit on what is in a little midterm future, the big things that are gonna come, because there's a saturation already that will happen. So for us, the we are reacting to the market. For example, what we see is that we our focus is going more towards from LMS to LXP. It's the same paradigm wherein hotels were there. You go to a La Meridian and just get a room, get the ambience, and come back. But then Airbnb came. So if you not only go there, the owner of that house will take you around maybe for a stroll and give you experiences. So the exact same thing of experience economy has happened in. So our one of the objective is that from a product point of view, can we add more experiential elements, or at least support for experiential element whereby can you have a very very crisp UI which attracts people? Can you have AI built into it so that it is supporting people? AI not for the heck of it, but they should feel ki, okay, they have to apply less of their brain. It is assisting them, it is telling them, it is recommending them, okay, now do this, do that. It is giving them. So those kind of features we have already built, and we are releasing it to our clients in our upgrades, uh, which is about increasing the experience. If somebody goes there, they feel little better than just going to a dry LMS. That is the first strategy we have in the coming quarters. We already, in fact, good news is that we already delivered. We are mostly making it successful with our customer success team. um, the second thing is that on the content business side, we are trying to increase our efficiency so that we can create awesome content in a very smaller time. So that, for that, we're using a lot of automations, so a lot of technologies which can allow us to do certain repeated work, so my designer don't have to click and press, some of the technologies around that. So it's more of an internal innovation we are doing, which will allow us to become more. So let's say there's a competing company which can do something in 40 hour using these technologies in a certain set of things, not a general case. No, maybe my team has that magic recipe through which they can just do it in 8 hours. So that's another of my agenda area, to provide those kind of automatic, you know technologies which are available. And the third part is this whole piece of sales enablement or the performance support systems, wherein my system becomes like a next to Google kind of a thing for that organization. It should, you, for example, you use three things, you use Google for your searches. Can my stuff has something like that in that context? I'm not making a Google, but whatever content reside, can I really massage it so that anybody is looking for a question that is also answered, that I talked about? That is what we have already delivered, and we are refining it. In the same line, LinkedIn, if you see LinkedIn, what it does, it connects people, right? I mean, we all have LinkedIn accounts, we make connects. But the funny irony is that even large organizations don't have a LinkedIn of their own, which means, what is LinkedIn? LinkedIn is nothing but it represents your skill. Okay, what you did, where you are, what certification you did. The interesting irony is that even large, rich, big organization, they don't have that kind of a LinkedIn within they can know which competency lies where. There are so much investment in competency based systems, recording competency and finding out people. Funny thing, like we say in Hindi, chirag tale andhera, you have bright people totally in your organization, but they're so close to you, you may not know. You may compartmentalize them. I remember one case, I'll tell you. One this insurance company, they were looking out for experts in Spanish language, and they had a crunch. They were not able to find, because they would no JD is per se designed for Spanish language, but to their good luck, they realized that they had some kind of a database, and through that they figure out कि in their organization there were people who for some reason knew Spanish languages, and they were able to pull in. Now they were lucky, but that was a blind shot. But imagine the competencies of people. It's easy to put in the system. In our system, you put all the competency, and suppose you're doing a project and you want a certain skill. Why do you think only in your department or well-known department it will be there? The skill there may be somebody who may have done a course in data science from Udemy or wherever. He may be in your finance department, a very bright guy. So the another thing which we are working on is, how do you even get those competencies around you, catalog them, so that when in time of need, you can fill those people in. So I would say these are our short range things, and I will maybe dwell a little bit on where I see the direction. How will this saturation break? And I'll give you some small analogies which are not limited to our firm, but the general trend, and I think it'll be interesting. So if you see, if you're tracking news, BMW or Mercedes, one of these companies, have recently launched in the car show a mind control car. So you could control a few things like turning on your AC, not driving maybe, but turning on your AC, turning on light, by not touching or speaking out, but just by thinking about it. What they've done is they put a small headgear, and that headgear is smart enough to read, and you will train it, of course. So you have to sit in that car and train a few times. You have to think about turning on the AC and everything. So this is one example. The second example is this whole Neuralink thing that Elon Musk is doing, wherein they are trying to impart something. Now, what I'm trying to say is, forget these things. Let's try to figure out what category they belong to. They belong to a category of, I would say, a biofeedback. They belong to biofeedback. Now, everybody has good content. You have the same content. I have the same content. Maybe it's an open source content for everybody, best content. Now, the bottleneck shift. All companies have their LMSs that content will be playing. Probably the next winner would be that company or that technology which can detect, let's say, if the person is getting bored, so he may take a break. So I believe that in next 2.5 years, and we are also working on those technologies, because those are our acceleration point where we can become 10x version of what we are. So I have a separate team which we invest a lot of money on, which we are developing, and at least we are getting in pace with that kind of technologies, where you can have biofeedback. Suppose a content is playing and the system can read your face, or the whole, so many other things you can do, multimodal analysis, and you can figure out if this content is getting boring. It is by design boring. So those kind of things will come. The content will be audited, just like there will be analytics. You put a content and it will say, okay, you know what, the teacher was awesome here, but this is where most of the people lose attention. So that'll be the awesome thing. The content now today is a very black box piece. Some designer made it, it is done well, but there's no analytics. So that is one phenomena you will see coming in, and we will also lead race in some of them. The biofeedback aspect, it need not be a head-based control, but there are a lot of AI techniques through which you can gauge that. Luckily, we all these thanks to this whole proctoring business, now it is allowed. Earlier, it used to be challenged. If you were giving proctoring solution, nobody was ready. No, 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 don't turn on the camera. It is against privacy, whatever. Now, remote, when you are working, you need camera on. Otherwise, how will you know somebody is cheating or not? So the acceptance to cameras opened up the world for us, because that's the biofeedback. It is not just camera watching you; it can read your expressions also. And if you have algorithm written, you can say it is the guy is getting bored. This is a boring content. This part of the content is boring. So biofeedback is one of the things that you're going to see. Second is you will be seeing the Airbnb effect. Experience based content, more gamification, more awesomeness. But it is going to be a difficult climb, because people get habituated, right? So look at, the best content in Netflix, people don't watch. They have to put many things in it just to make it attractive for you to watch. So same thing. And huge issue is over distraction issues, right? Many things are there for everybody. There are so many choices. So that is leading to, there are a lot of studies which are saying, and it's very confirmatory studies, that there's a lot of brain issues people are facing, to different orders. Not that everybody is getting but brains are changing, because they were never exposed to that rapid change happening, something clicking here. I mean, so I feel that some slowing down will happen now. What that slowing down will be, how will it happen, how can these systems assist you to slow down, will be a winning factor. Sometimes it's not always the race, it is the break sometimes it makes you win. And I feel, and our agenda is that to not only be the fastest in terms of AI, but finding out those human biofeedback or smart features where you can actually go closer to the end user and say, "Okay, let's slow him down now." Why to accelerate? Keep recommending him content. Can there be a system which can tell you now, go ahead, look at this image, slow down, take 20 breaths? I think that will be more inclusive in terms of we have to accelerate learning, because people will not learn because the content awesomeness is not there. There is there. All great content is there. But how do you take that content to the brain? And that's a different science. And I think that's a big space to be taken care of. Digital divide in next 2.5 3 years, I really wish that is where the governments can play a major role. While we as technology companies are covering this bright spaces of all the enterprises getting enabled, if they kind of focus on primary education, tablet based education, now there's no excuse left, because tablets are everywhere, network is there. I'm very sure governments would be working on it and solving the digital divide, because as a country, India, I feel, by adding more PhDs may not be the best step. Probably this whole bottom of the pyramid problem the government should be solving, and now everything is set. Thanks to this COVID, a lot of things have happened. And the last piece I will put in this is that, which is not a trend, which is probably a existing trend, that suppose you have a free time, you have an option of watching Netflix, awesome movie, to 1.5 hours or whatever. But many people don't do that. They go to reels, short size content. Why? Again, because of a little, if you allow me a little bit of a brain situation, that people have smaller wavelength of attention. So when you have a small wavelength of attention, you go for a content which is smaller wavelength, small size content. So as a company, we are also kind of aligning to that rather than fighting it. So can I make things smaller? In the way, can I provide something on my platform which allows people to just take a very small window and kind of go into the same bandwidth of low attention span, rather than fighting with the, can I increase the span by adding more gamification, because that is an upper limit. So interesting feed. Last part is that evil AI part, that AI is gonna be disrupting in a big way. Repetitive tasks are gonna go away. So people are going to see a huge crisis. Even with all those learning platform, they may be learning things which will be putting them in the direct competition with these algorithms. So I see that as an opportunity as well as a threat. And universities are the last part that I'll talk about. That universities are going to get challenged. COVID has accelerated it, because I remember somebody got into one of the top league university. He's paying the top fees, but he's not even attended a single class. So the first time people are kind of, universities are getting challenged. This whole image of this being a church of all education, um, that thing is now challenged. So I'm going to watch how university is going to really collaborate now with. So this church is going to be maybe changing its forms. What I feel. So these are my predictions. As I see this whole industry.
Sure. Great. Thanks a lot. Appreciate your time and definitely thank you. Have a good evening.